Hello, everybody, and welcome to our In Global Market series. Today, we're getting an update from the UK. The series is to help you navigate doing business globally at such a difficult time. My name is Belinda Redman, and I'm the State Director for Trade and Investment, and I'll be your host today. In a minute, I'll introduce you to the Honourable David Ridgway, who is the Minister for Trade and Investment. And I just want to outline a few of the logistics of today. So you'll have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar. There's a small Q&A function on the top left-hand side of your panel. Please select All Panel and type your question at the bottom of the screen. Following the presentations by our South Australian representative overseas in London, James Mance, I will ask Minister Ridgway and James to answer the questions you have raised throughout the session. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we're not going to get to every question, but we will summarise each question and respond to them along with our website, along with this recording. Throughout the webinar, you'll also receive the ability to respond to a poll. This will really help us to prepare better sessions in the future. I'd really like to introduce you to now the Honourable David Ridgway, the Minister for Trade and Investment.
Hey, good evening everybody, or good morning in the UK, and thank you Belinda. It is a pleasure to be here and in these very unusual circumstances that we face, the world's facing now with the COVID-19 and the extraordinary pressures it's putting on governments, communities, society and businesses. So it is a pleasure to have you all here. And this is the fourth one of these webinars we've had to try and just keep our exporters a little bit in touch with what's happening in markets. So we've done Japan, Malaysia and the US, and we've obviously got the UK today, and we have China tomorrow. So it is important to use this as a bit of an opportunity to find out from our representatives in these countries. And I guess it's a good example of the department sort of pivoting a bit. We would have been I was hoping over Easter to head towards the UK and spend some time next week in the UK with, or beyond after Easter, with James and Bill and the team there. Sadly, that's not going to happen, but we're very keen to hear from you. We've got sort of a sea freight and road freight is still pretty much operating here, but air freight is somewhat challenging for us. So I look forward to hearing from James. I have another appointment at 6 p.m. our time, which is 26 minutes time. So I won't say farewell at the end. I'll just drop away. I'll answer your questions if I can, but please, let's listen to James and just get an update from James at exactly what's happening on the ground in the UK.
So hi everyone, my name's James Mraz. I've been based in London for 4 years, originally from Adelaide, and I'm pleased to be bringing this presentation to you today. Just to give you a bit of background on the Office of the Agent General, we were established in 1856. Our remit covers geographically both the UK and the EU, but for the purposes of this presentation, I have focused on the UK. We have a team of 7 people, all from the private sector in my team, working across trade and investment, which is led by Bill Muirhead, the Agent General, who has been in post for 12 years. The UK is Australia's 3rd largest source of FDI and the 10th largest destination for South Australian exports, with wine representing 65% of that. Then you have meat and meat preparations and machinery with about 5% market share. So as you know, we know that there are at least 30 South Australian companies with a presence in the UK. These include companies such as Accolade Wines, R.M. Williams, Edible Blooms. So part of my presentation today, I want to focus on the wine industry, and I also want to focus on companies who have a presence or a subsidiary based in the UK, because there's a whole suite of programs that have been rolled out that I'll talk to you about today that you may get access to. Yeah. So, and also what I want to talk to you about is the current market. So the status of COVID-19, what the economic situation is, how the market is functioning, so which industries and specific organisations within those remain active and how they're still conducting themselves. What has been the response from the government to manage this crisis? And from a South Australian company's perspective, what we need to focus on and the recovery. Okay, so the current market conditions. So the government has an action plan for dealing with the virus, which involves 3 phases: contain, delay, and mitigate. We've now moved from the contain into the delay phase, which commenced on the 12th of March, with a comprehensive lockdown commencing on the 23rd of March. Only essential services are active, which I'll discuss in the next slide. The ratings agency Fitch recently lowered the UK's credit rating from AA to AA negative, and economists are predicting a second quarter decline of up to minus 15% GDP, which far exceeds the fourth quarter of the GFC worst quarter, which was negative 2.2%. There are some positive expectations, though. We expect the duration will be significantly shorter, as there aren't the same structural reasons that occurred in the GFC. But there has been a profound impact on hospitality, leisure, and hotels. It's important to note that South Australian companies who have subsidiaries based in the UK will be covered by the government provisions. So that includes the loans packages and some of the packages that are available for employees who may get furloughed, which has effectively been put on leave. From I guess a universal credit perspective, there are nearly 1 million people who applied for universal credit or effectively welfare over the past fortnight. The department or the government would normally expect about 100,000 claims in a 2-week period. So that's to give you some context as to the increase. From an airport perspective, there is quite limited capacity. So Heathrow is down to 1 runway. Gatwick, Stansted and Luton is significantly reduced. The airline industry is under some extreme pressure, with British Airways most recently suspending 36,000 staff of their 40,000, who've then been placed under the job retention scheme, which is where 80% of salaries are paid up to £2,500 per month by the government. So effectively, you're seeing a nationalisation of many private sector industries across the economy. A lot of the low-cost carriers like EasyJet and Ryanair are also significantly reduced in their capacity. For example, Ryanair flying 20 daily flights at the moment, whereas they usually do 2,500. But I guess interesting point to that is low-cost carriers have extremely strong balance sheets, so they're well placed to weather the storm. I guess from a social distancing perspective, this could continue for up to 3 months. But recently, a social distancing study was undertaken by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and they revealed that the R0, or the reproduction number, has fallen to below 1, which is, I guess, the critical number at 0.62 at the moment. So some positive signs there. So what is functioning? Supermarkets, which sell alcohol in the UK, have experienced a large increase in alcohol sales, jumping by 22% in March. And as people have built up stockpiles in preparation for being stuck at home. Over the same period, grocery sales have increased 20%. The important context here is that the on-trade, such as pubs, restaurants and bars, were only shut on the 20th of March. So that's only a portion of the month where we've seen this increase. From a, I guess, supermarket perspective as well, Britons have only increased their expenditure about £18 a week, which is enough to put supermarkets just in time for supply chains under a lot of pressure. I guess the key point here is we don't actually have a shortage of food, it's just a shortage of logistics and constraints around logistics, but that has been worked through, and they're actually starting to relieve restrictions on sort of a maximum number of items you can purchase. We've seen some large spikes for online wine merchants and retailers, including Laithwaite's, Virgin Wines and Majestic Wines. As a result, their web pages have been crashing, but the knock-on effect of stockpiling has not yet impacted on the supply chain. Bulk wine bottlers in the UK are operational and have Australian wine on their shelves. However, the availability of shipping containers, many of which are in Asian ports, might have an impact down the track. So we keeping a close eye on that in conjunction with Wine Australia. No shipping routes have been badly affected at the moment, though, so that's a positive. There has been a little bit of congestion at the customs warehouse side. From an on-trade impact, it has pushed several businesses into administration, especially the marginal ones. So I'd encourage vineyards and winemakers to review with our distributors which of the on-trade they're dealing with. For example, Caluccio's, which is a large franchise, they have 71 outlets. They've recently gone into administration. So the next slide is about what the government has done, what measures they've taken. So they have basically outlined a $330 billion loan guarantee scheme, of which $145 million have been deployed. This scheme is continuously being evolved and worked on with the banks. So I guess ironically, compared to the GFC, the banks are now going to be a key part of the solution as we go through effectively a hibernation process with the economy. There are a whole lot of other measures. Some ones that might be of interest to South Australian companies with UK subsidiaries relate to, especially if you're in retail, hospitality or leisure, as you get some relief on business rates. There's some cash grants of up to £25,000 available, VAT deferral or GST equivalent deferral. There's also a job retention scheme, which I spoke about earlier, that relates to employees who get furloughed or basically suspended, where up to 80% of their salary, up to the value of £2,500, will be paid by the government. This also includes national insurance and pension. So it's a unprecedented level of involvement by the government. There are other schemes around self-employment. I guess from a safety and a public confidence perspective, the government called on 250,000 people to volunteer and register. They've had over 750,000 applicants over the last 2 weeks. So this is a really positive sign. People are really rallying. That keep calm and carry on attitude of the Brits is really coming through. It's really positive. And we've seen some fantastic stories with, it's been the last 2 Thursdays where people go out on their balconies or out onto the street and applaud the NHS or the medical workers. So what do you need to do? So this really depends on the product you're selling. And this provides a great opportunity for you to step away and consider the suitability and strategy of your product in this market. Note there will be an increase in risk aversion across the economy, with domestic consumption likely to moderate, and also consumer saving will likely increase. So this is good news for businesses who are incumbents, who are already well established in market. Loyalty is a key theme in this crisis. Suppliers and supply chains are really dealing with that best relationships and resorting to those. So I guess what I'd hazard is there's not a great opportunity for new market entrants at the moment. I would caution you not to see the UK as a silver bullet at this stage, but I will talk a little bit later about some potential opportunities. We have seen some interesting developments with some of the supermarkets simplifying their product range, especially around wine, and only retaining 75% of the top selling stock to provide shelf space for other essential items like food. I guess some other interesting things. So in my slide here, I'm talking about what South Australian and UK businesses have done. So regarding their agility, their ability to pivot into producing sanitizer, ventilators, PPE. So sanitizer, you're seeing Brewdog, which is a brewer in the UK, producing something that is way outside their core business. And then Bickford's producing, as we all know very well, producing sanitizer. Same with the UK Mint, producing personal protective equipment. And a lot of fashion labels starting to produce medical equipment, and that's across Europe. From I speak here about cultivating your relationships with your supply chain, so of course continue to do that and make sure you get on the phone and speak to them. We've been doing that a lot with our clients, and they certainly value that contact. Everyone's working from home like I am today, so I think that's really important that you continue to do that. Anecdotally, we've noticed from some of the FTSE top 100 companies have started to split their teams between operations and growth. So they are starting to look forward to the future on how they pivot and how they make the most of this. Also, some other anecdotes. We've noticed some companies are starting to second staff into some of their supply chain companies to, first of all, assist them, but also to, I guess, get to know their business a lot better. So preparing for recovery. Certainly do not understand the transformation that we're going through. This has been forced upon us over the last 2-3 weeks. We're in our 3rd week here in the UK of forced isolation. It's phenomenal how many businesses have been able to pivot and move to an online platform. The number of video conferences going on, I don't actually notice a downturn in productivity in those businesses that have been able to continue operating. That's obviously a different story for the services side, which is very customer facing. We'll see a lot less travel going forward. a huge rollout of e-commerce platforms and flexible working. From a wine perspective, post-COVID, I think we're going to see a change in drinking habits. So people who have never bought from the supermarket or from wine merchants will now be doing so, and that's going to become the norm. The on-trade are finding other solutions, restaurants, and are starting to deliver food and signing up to Deliveroo and Uber Eats and those sort of platforms. But I think we're going to start to see a bit of a game changer here in that people will be buying from the off-trade. I guess an interesting anecdote around supply chains and the complexity of them, and I guess a lot of businesses are now being exposed to this due to the global shutdown. The Economist have this interesting anecdote about the humble cup of coffee can require up to 29 firms collaborating across 18 countries to produce that cup of coffee. So always keep that in mind, and it's probably in preparation for the recovery a good idea to review what your supply chains are, where your pinch points are, and how you can mitigate those going forward. Supply chain resetting to month zero. So the example of that relates to the co-op that I was speaking about earlier. They've started to free up shelf space for essential food products and other items. So they're reducing their wine stocks. This is going to effectively lead to a month zero or resetting of those terms. So our role is to, I guess, assist you and advise you when the timing is right, when you should start those conversations with distributors and retailers. Interesting note, though, with a retailer to get a new product into Tesco, for example, can take on average about 6 months. How can DTI help? Okay, so the London market, we've got a team of 7 people here who are ready to help you. We're really excited to help South Australia, recover and drive our exports forward. We work really closely with Austrade and Wine Australia, so our federal counterparts. We literally speak to them every day, so you can rest assured that it's a joined-up approach. We also obviously work close, being part of the Department for Trade and Investment, work closely with our TradeStart colleagues. So please engage with both of us. The time zone can be a challenge, but I guess that's why we're here, because we're able to have those face-to-face conversations with potential sales pathways for you. And then there are support programs such as the South Australian Exporter program. There's also the federal initiative around freight, the $110 million initiative to relieve pressure on seafood exports. So I encourage you to take advantage of those. And now I'll hand back over to Belinda. Thank you.
Thank you, James. A couple of questions have come through. James, the first one, can you explain how your office might be able to assist exporters in the market?
So naturally, it depends on the product, but the biggest value add for our office is market intelligence and our contacts. We've been working with a software services company based in Adelaide who've been seeking business development introductions across the UK and the EU. All of the members in our team have extensive networks across industry and government, and even the Royal Palace. So sometimes cold calling in an international market can be difficult, but with a government hat on, I must admit, we find it much easier to get in the door. We find recipients to those inquiries more willing to engage. Also, I'd just like to offer, when we do have companies visiting in the UK, that we encourage them to host meetings in our office in Australia House, based on the Strand, in our boardroom. And also, if you want to co-work or host any other meetings, please take us up on that offer.
Great. Another question for the Minister before you leave us. Will the UK and Europe be considered later as part of the Australian Government's International Freight Assistance Mechanism?
Yes, we expect it will be. Obviously, the federal government announced the freight support last week, and the focus was on China, Japan, Korea, the sort of near neighbours, but certainly the US and Europe and the UK were certainly part of their thinking. And certainly we've got some clients, and Clean Seas is one who a lot of their product goes to Europe. We've been talking to them about getting their products into Europe. So yes, we will be where possible, and we've got an export update tomorrow. We've got Michael Byrne, the National Freight Coordinator, talking to us tomorrow, so we'll have a little bit more detail then. And so if Belinda's got the name of the person to ask the question, when we've got some more information, we'll be able to email that to you.
Excellent, thank you. And one more, Minister. Are there likely to be new rules and regulations following Brexit?
Well, who knows with Brexit? I mean, obviously we've got to deal with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and really that's still being sort of worked out between the free trade agreement will be negotiated between the federal government and the UK government. We're all optimistic that it'll present a whole range of new opportunities for South Australian exporters into the UK, and we don't quite know what the arrangement will be with Europe. But they're two big economies, and the UK is one, and a big economy, and Europe's a massive economy. So we would expect to see some opportunities, especially back into the UK with our long colonial links to the UK.
Excellent. James, I know that you mentioned it wasn't a good time to start entering the market in the UK. We have a question here. So, what should I consider before entering the UK or EU market to export?
Thank you for the question. So both markets are highly sophisticated, which both in the UK and EU, so it means your product needs to stand up on its own 2 feet. So preparation is the key. Things to consider beforehand include, can I produce sufficient volumes? So can I meet market demand? So it's all about setting expectations. Which market am I targeting and why? Do I have a dedicated export budget? So you need to properly project manage this and set adequate amounts of funding for each of the phases. What is my market entry strategy? I guess having a comprehensive understanding of the pricing. So what are the tariffs? What are the taxes? What are the contract terms? Because they can often be quite different in this market compared to Australia. And what is my project plan? So how do I measure success?
Excellent. And James, again, can you help my wine business in determining how and when to enter? Yeah,
so our team is well placed. We have an extensive range of clients we've helped in this area. We sort of have weekly inquiries. I'd say there's been some predictable market developments with retailers rewarding loyalty at the moment and sticking with existing suppliers. So an important note for the off-trade, as I mentioned earlier, is it can take up to 6 months to add a new product into a product range with a retailer. But I guess, as I alluded to earlier, with the co-op starting to simplify their range, it is going to start to create opportunities, and it creates that month zero or reset. So our office maintains regular contact with distributors, importers, retailers, freight forwarders, and the on-trade, and we also work really closely with Wine Australia. So we can be your eyes and ears. I'd encourage you to set up a call, reach out to us. It wasn't caught on the slides, but if you visit newsouthaustralia.com, we're active across all social platforms. We also have a new concept called South Australia Live, which is effectively a TV show that we've been doing to reach out to our customers and clients whilst we're all locked up in home. So I encourage you to look at that as well, which you'll find through our website. But that's also, we're using that as an opportunity to showcase some of our exporters. So if you're interested and you want to be presented, this is another way we're trying to reach out in what is a difficult environment and raise awareness of what our exporters have to offer.
Excellent. Thank you, James. So that's the end of our questions. Please fill out the poll that you'll see come through. It's very important for us to keep these seminars going, and so we appreciate your feedback. Thank you very much, Minister Ridgway, for joining us. And thank you, James, for joining us. And we hope you'll join us tomorrow morning for our China and Hong Kong update. So thanks very much, everyone. Good night.